All right, I believe we are on. This is for Child 310. Andrew Pena, Mackenzie Gomez, and Carissa Weeks is on this Google Hangout, and we're ready to go. And I think Mackenzie, we're going to start with you first, and we'll talk about the fact sheet first. So,
Okay, so for our assignment, we chose to do a fact sheet, and we chose to do the topic overcoming obesity through physical activity in early childhood. And I'll start with my few bullet points that I chose in my article that I found. So I chose four different kind of factors that deal with obesity and that kind of play a role in obesity. So the first one was um, the involvement of at least one parent produced better weight loss outcomes than without parents. So it kind of like, I'm trying to think of an example, but probably, I mean, kids that have like a birth parent instead of like an adopted parent or like anything that's not like their own parent, they've had better weight loss, I guess. That's what the one of the points said. And so without any parents, there's no guidance in the way to eat or how to act if their parents aren't necessarily involved. It's not there's no guidance for them. So they kind of just eat whatever. Or without parents, there's no one to tell them not to stay on the couch all day or not to get up and play. And having at least one parent encourages the child and can help their healthy lifestyle. And the next bullet point, it says the child's home environment affects a child's weight loss or gain. So fighting or parents who fight all the time can cause stress, which leads to weight gain. Um, Not more so in, I guess, the early childhood, but as I start to get older, that kind of affects it. No access to physical activities, so if their um, home life, there's not really anything to do physically. Parents don't really take them out to go play at a park or anything like that. That can obviously affect them not being able to keep up a healthy lifestyle. And no healthy foods given in the home. So if their parents don't give them, obviously certain foods, or it's just not accessible in their home, that's another part of the home environment. So the next bullet point was full-time working parents can cause stress on the child, resulting in weight gain. So parents have no time to teach children about a healthy lifestyle because if they're working full time, there's not really any time to sit down and talk about, being able to get up and be active and eat right. So no, they don't teach them because they don't have time. And no time with parents at all can actually cause stress. I think as kids, they love their parents, they want to spend time with them, and if they don't have that time, it can kind of make them sad or depressed or cause stress, and so that stress can result in weight gain. Um, and the last bullet point was low income families affect the weight of a child as well. So I've noticed people who don't have a lot of money, result in a lot of cheap fast food because they don't have the money to necessarily buy groceries or anything. So that can affect it. And low income families cannot afford as many physical activities. So, I mean, not necessarily like, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do that are free that can help, but, certain people like to pay to go somewhere and do something which is you know, physically an activity.
well,
Um,
I would say like sports with sports. Some
yeah,
families
like,
can't do sports. You
like
know,
my parents, we did cheer when we were growing up, and so they eventually we stopped because it was just too much money. And so just I mean I feel like any sports it costs money, so that's yeah, good example. And then also last point was just healthy foods can be more expensive, so just making it any healthy meal, notice all the healthy foods become more expensive and it's harder to buy that. So those were my bullet points, so I don't know who wants to go next.
well, I just wanted to say a couple things on them. I mean, I really liked the reason, going through your bullet points and reading them. I thought this was really interesting because I never really thought about, as far as parents' involvement and the impacts that it has on children and their physical activity. And if you think about parents, you said at least one parent, so you just need. And then you talked about in here too how if the parents are full time working, it just causes more stress on the child. So it's like, I guess in the LDS community, we're so into families, parents, and being parents, that we should be, hopefully that we, preach about it or hear about it at church so often, that be involved with your kids' lives, be involved in their schoolwork, be involved in their lives. And when you're doing that, your research talked about, it causes less, or it causes more stress when parents aren't involved and when they're at work more, than as a child. You're like, yeah, you don't really have people to talk, you don't have parents to talk to, you don't have things to bounce off struggles at school or with friends or whatever that you have. And so you kind of have your own little, if you don't have parents to kind of help you through your struggles, then you kind of just do whatever you want to do, whether it's, well, if I don't want to spend time with friends, or if I'm stressing about friends, then I'm going to sit at home and not really do much. And there's no one's encouraging me to go out and do stuff and hang out with friends, or even spending the time to. You're probably going to sit at home, not do much, watch TV, maybe eat a little bit more or something like that. And then I liked a lot of your research. It made sense. Low income families. And so I kind of thought that was good. I thought it was interesting that pointed out. So it was good.
Also, a little, I don't know where I heard this story or something, but just like there was like a family and the child was overweight, but like the parents didn't say like you need to go work out, you need to do like all this stuff. Instead, like they were like together we're gonna do this, even though the parents like I mean like everybody needs to like exercise and stuff, but the parents like didn't necessarily need it as much as the child, but they made it like a family thing, so they would always go like on bike rides together, or like they all ate healthy. So I just think like that's also important to make it more like of a family thing instead of just like the kid needs to work on it. So
Yeah, I think involving families is like the biggest thing, because I feel like as children, they look up to their parents so much, and if their parents are doing, and I think that's another factor. I think being an example as a parent, like being, doing, like you said, doing things together, like eating right together and exercising. If they see that, their parents are doing that, they will be more willing to do that. If it's harder when like a parent is eating pizza and then the parent's like, hey, you need to eat your healthy food. Like, no child's going to want to do that because they see their parents eating pizza. So, I mean, not that we shouldn't have certain foods like that, but I mean, just, making it, I'm trying to think of the word, making it, you know, I can't think of the word, but yeah.
like a reasonable portion and stuff.
Yeah, portion. There you go. So.
I can go next on my bullet points.
Okay.
They're kind of like the same, but so I have that the first one was that just that it is a fact that childhood physical inactivity is on the rise in the United States. Like the points that I had was just like they'd rather be inside watching television than outside. There's like I think that even like compared to my generation and like my parents' generation, like there's just such a difference. Like there is more I think more options for like technology and for television and different shows and stuff than there was back then, which definitely adds, but like they were just like they loved being outside. And so I think like that love has even like dwindled because of technology and stuff. My next one was that just like that it's common that low physical activity is a factor of being overweight, and so that's just part of it, that it just like brings that fact that being outside and being active and stuff is so important. And then the other one was children are taking in more energy than releasing. In order to obtain a healthy body weight, energy consumed needs to be equal to the energy output. I thought this was interesting, like getting more into the little bit of the details, but it's so true. Like if you just sit around all day and you just eat, then obviously you're not going to be healthy. Another point was physical activity can help prevent obesity, so it's just kind of common and makes sense. But just like the main thing that I want to talk about there is that physical activity should be fun and entertaining. Like lots of parents like say like, yeah, let's like do sports and stuff, but like the love needs to be there too for like the sport or something. Like, so I don't think that they should be forced, like maybe at the beginning, like give them different options to do, because like I think that there is something out there for everyone, even if it's not it's not playing soccer and running up and down the field. Like just even being outside is better than on the couch, and I think that that can really help like your physical body. And then my third point, there are many different ways to encourage children to live a physically active lifestyle. Just kind of like we've been talking about, there's like sports, just exercising outside, being out with your family, going to the park, hiking, swimming. Like there's just so many different options. And I think that there really is like something that every kid out there can like. I mean, like not everyone's going to like football, but it may be like the team part that they don't like, but so there's like single or I don't know what they call them, just like one person sports instead of team sports, but I don't know. So that's kind of what I have.
Sweet. Did you have anything to say, Mackenzie? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like with the kind of first part that you talked about, how childhood physical inactivity is on the rise, and I think it's just so sad because it's so true. I mean, I see, like I remember it wasn't as bad when I was a kid. I mean, I'm still young, but when I was a kid, we wanted to go outside. We wanted to do those things. We were in the pool 24/7 when it was summer, and we were just always outside. And it was starting, as I was growing up, I started noticing like more stuff coming out, like video games and different things, and I've noticed more and more kids were like, I want to stay inside and play video games. And just as I got older, it was just so sad to watch. And like when I went babysitting, when I turned 12 and I started babysitting, I noticed these kids just wanted to sit. They didn't want to do anything. And I was like, it was so sad to just start to watch that, go down, and no one, all the kids just wanted to do nothing. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's true, and it's sad, but it's true. I think it's important to teach them. I think that's the biggest thing, is they need to know, what a healthy lifestyle is and what it takes to have a healthy lifestyle and how important it is to have one. So I think it's just preparing them and teaching them.
Well, just to go in exactly with what you said, I guess goes into my points that you're talking about, because you just talked about teaching them, teaching kids, teaching our family, right? And we already kind of talked about how important parents' role is in modeling. I mean, Mackenzie and Chrissy both talked about kind of, or Chrissy, you said children model their parents, right? And then Mackenzie up above, you kind of talked about the same thing. Children should be, your parents need to be examples. So my points come to, I had 3 points, and it says, so the first one is social cognitive theory offers a practically useful framework for designing primary intervention to reduce childhood obesity. So it talked about social efficacy and like pretty much your knowledge and your understanding, social understanding of like certain things. So the 3 points that I had was social efficacy in limiting television and in consumption of fruits and vegetables and in drinking 8 glasses of water a day. So just the 3 points were like, the article talked about these are 3 things that if you're expected to do, or if you have an expectation to do these things, and kids know like, oh, I should be drinking lots of water. My mom tells me to drink lots of water, to go out and play, or to eat these fruits and vegetables. If it's constantly on your parents' mind, then it's going to be on your kid's mind. And same with television. If it's constantly on their minds and parents are reminding themselves and their kids, then the social efficacy is going to be strengthened. The kids are going to understand, like, okay, this is good for me. This is something I should be doing. This is something that, that I think it's just one of those things that just need to be taught, needs to be explained to, um, multiple. You have to have parents that are involved in kind of helping these things. So those are my kind of 3 points in that aspect. And then I was going to do another point, but it was on physical activity, and we already talked about that, so I just didn't put that down because it was pretty much covered. But my next point was limiting television viewing. So have a set time that children watch television per day, limiting, and then I did more almost like goals, like limiting television to 2 hours per day, and then require more physical activity hours compared to television hours per day. And then the next one was increasing fruit, vegetable, and water intake. Expectation of 8 glasses of water a day, consuming 5 fruit and vegetables per day, and then your kids need to have more fruits and vegetables and water intake, the better chances of reducing obesity. And so from the articles that I got from for this, to me, was more like you guys did I think probably a better job on like this is what we should be doing, and then mine are kind of like almost goals. But I think that a big part that I see as far as children with obesity is like really probably parent involvement, and how parents and schools can have a big impact on that as well, because you think about some schools are like taking away recess and stuff. It's like taking away their physical activity, to get them outside and doing things. So as far as children obesity, I think a big part of it is children involved or parent involvement, and encouraging going outside, playing, social interaction with other kids, and doing things like that. And so that's kind of my 3 points that I came up with. So from the research that I did.
Just some thoughts that I've had with like not being outside as much. A thought that I had was that my sister-in-law, like, she has been like so much more careful than like my parents. I mean, like, I grew up in a small town, like, don't really have any neighbors, but like they were in Boise and like they had a fence and stuff, but like she like wouldn't let the kids just go outside and play by themselves because there's like they had people like looking through their fences and stuff. So that's like scary thing. So I think that that's also a big consideration, that if the parents like say like, yeah, kids, like, you can go out and play, but like the parents also have to be involved, like we've been talking about, and they are gonna have to take extra time to go to the parks or go out places with the kids instead of just letting them go like it was when I was a little kid. Also, I think like the water intake, like, that's a huge thing. Like, but I feel like that's stressed more like when you're like older. Like, everyone's like, you drink your water, but more like when you're a little kid, like, that's not something that's talked about. So I thought that was interesting, that like even just bringing that up and being aware that little kids do need to drink water. Like, it makes sense, but yeah. So I just thought that was interesting.
To kind of go off of that, like talking about like parent involvement and how like if they go outside, like parents should be out there and be playing with them. I think that kind of also has to do with like what we learn about in the gospel. Like we should have that family time where we're together and we should be involved together. We shouldn't be, being on our phone while our kids are playing. Like we should be out there playing with them and be involved together and have that family home evening and have those different wholesome activities as a family. So that kind of goes along with like having that physical activity, like them actually doing something, but then also doing it together and not just having them go and do it by themselves while you're just sitting there. But yeah, I think those are my thoughts.
Perfect.
Awesome. Should we move on to the next point? Does anyone else have anything else there to talk about? So social emotional domain intervention. So the research that we conducted. Mackenzie, did you want to go on that one?
Sure. So I just chose the topic bullying because I am actually a preschool teacher and I see that a lot. I see a lot of kids getting bullied, and I work kind of in a tutti frutti kind of preschool. It's very, very wealthy families, and I think a lot of, I don't want to say that sounds bad, but a lot of them are just very spoiled and bratty. I don't want to say that just because I love them, but I mean, it's true. They they're raised in a wealthy, which there's nothing wrong with it, but parents I've noticed don't. Some parents do, and they're great, but some parents don't teach them about, how we should act with other friends and how we should involve friends and not be rude and not talk to them. And I think a lot of parents think it's like, oh, my child does no wrong and, whatever. But so I chose that just because I see it a lot and it's really sad to watch and
You
really
said you said bullying, right?
bullying, yeah, bullying. So I mean, it's hard to watch because it happens almost every day. We have to, see them, we have to teach them and teach them what's important and how we should talk to our friends and involve everyone and not be rude to anyone. So I found an article that says the top 5 ways educators can stop bullies. So I kind of thought, like, it has to do with me. So I kind of chose that one. I thought it was a good one to pick. So the 5 bullet points I talked about was, number 1, create a safe and supportive environment. So it says establish a culture of inclusion and respect that welcomes all students, monitor bullying hotspots in and around the building, set a tone of respect in the classroom. So I think that's super important because we try to do that ourselves. We try and create a safe and supportive environment. Everyone should be supportive to everyone. We should include everyone and make everyone feel welcomed. Not, talk down on anyone, to any of the kids, and not have favorites or, different things like that. And I feel like if we respect kids ourselves, they'll respect us back. So I think that's really important, is creating that safe environment so kids want to go to school. They want to be able to go to school. And I think creating that tone of the environment will help others kind of follow along, if that makes sense. So number 2, it says manage classrooms to prevent bullying. So develop rules with students so they set their own climate of respect and responsibility, and reinforce the rules by making expectations clear and keeping requests simple, direct, and specific. So I like that last part where it says keeping requests simple, direct, and specific. So I think, like, not crazy requests or crazy things like you have to play with this kid or different things like that. I think it's keeping them simple and saying, explaining to them how we should involve everyone and how it says develop rules with students. Oh yeah, so just rules. I think simple rules that, like, explain to them why it's important, but they also can't just leave someone out. I don't know if that's making any sense, but you can't obviously force them, but at the same time we can't teach them to say no when someone wants to play with them. Does that make sense? I don't know. So I guess just setting those rules with how we talk to our friends in the classroom. The 3rd point was stop bullying on the spot. So intervene immediately. It's okay to get another adult to help. Don't talk to the kids involved together, only separately. And don't make the kids involved apologize or patch up relations on the spot. I thought it was kind of interesting because when I necessarily don't do that, so I think it was kind of interesting to see that they said that, because when I notice a problem or the kids come up to us and say, he did this and she did this, we get down on their level so they feel we bend down to their level and we talk to them and we say, what happened? Tell me what happened. Why are you hurt? Who did what? And da-da-da. And then we resolve it right then and there. So I think I don't know, I was kind of stumbled on that one just because they said, talk to them separately, which I get. I think that, I like how it says it's okay to get another adult to help. So I think maybe getting the parents involved and telling them, what happened. But do you guys know why they would think, like, talk to them separately?
One of the things that I think, as far as separately, would be, kind of on my mission, one of my things my mission president always talked about, um, as leaders, he would say if you need to, he said if you need to correct somebody, a missionary, of like if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing or saying things they shouldn't be saying, if they they didn't shave or they're wearing inappropriate ties or they're not really looking to part as a missionary or something. So if you need to correct somebody, if you need to talk to somebody, you always do it. You always do it privately. You never and so that, and I take that same thing to the next level with children, with my children, parenting or kids at school, right? So if you're ever going to talk to somebody, um, and you're going to, I guess, in a sense, correct them or kind of, what's the word I'm trying to say? Not yell at them, correct them. You don't want to embarrass them more in front of peers or in front of people, and not necessarily that you're trying to do that, but you want to just talk to them behind, just one on one, like get to know, like, well, why, how come this happened? Why did it happen? Why did you do that? How would that make you feel if you were on that end of the story? That way you can kind of almost, I don't know, just have a one-on-one conversation with the kid or child, and so that's kind of how I think of it as far as for me as a parent. And when I'm thinking back on my mission, or if I'm in like your situation as an aide or a teacher, um, that way you can kind of hear both sides of the stories, and you're not necessarily on either side, but you can kind of share, like, how would you feeling if you're talking to a bully or talking to somebody that's instigating it. How would you feel if you're on this end? Yeah. How would you feel if you're doing this? Wouldn't make you feel good. And I have kind of a lot to go on to this because I did bowling also, but I'll let you finish. I'll let you keep going to talk about. But yeah, that was kind of my
Yeah,
reasoning.
I think, and it was interesting because I said don't make the kids involved apologize or like patch things up right away. I mean, I kind of disagree with that. I mean, I'm not a professional, but I kind of disagree with that because I think it's important to teach them that we should apologize. We should maybe we not necessarily right away, but we should teach them, go up to, the child that you hurt or you did something to, uh, and apologize to them and explain to them, I'm sorry. It's not. I mean, they're not old enough to know, like, I'm sorry, that's but at least apologize to start teach them that simple thing. When you hurt someone's feelings or you did something rude, you should apologize. So that was kind of my thing. But the fourth point was find out what happened. So get the facts, keep all the children involved separate, listen without blaming, and don't call the act bullying while you are trying to understand what happened. So that's what we do a lot. I think it's important just to find out exactly what happened. Talk to one person and say, what was their side of the story and the other person's side of the story, and get the facts straight on what happened. And then the last point was support the kids involved. So all kids involved in bullying, whether they are bullied, bully others, or see bullying, can be affected. It is important to support all kids involved to make sure the bullying doesn't continue and effects can be minimized. So I think that's great because I think supporting the kids, even if they're the ones watching it or even if they're the ones bullying themselves, even though they're the ones doing it, I think still supporting them and just teaching them how, what they're doing is wrong and just not necessarily talking down on them or being rude to them, but supporting them and just explaining to them what the issue is and how it's not right. So those were the 5 points in my article. So yeah.
Something that I just want to add. One thing that came to my mind is that if you do give them a little second, like the only reason that I would think like you wouldn't want to patch things up right away is if they were angry, like they need to kind of calm down. And I mean, like you don't necessarily see that with like preschoolers. Usually, it's usually just like they stole a toy or something. But as you get into like the older grades or whatever, then I think that it is more of like there's like that fire or that comes with the whole bullying and the situation. So I think like if you just give them time to calm down and then like try to fix things, then I think that would be better. But that was one thing, and then also what was the other thing? I don't know, I can't remember right now, but that was good.
Just real quick, like I liked what you said because you said like when they're younger, it's a little different. Like I agree. I think because like the age I work with, they're only 4 or 5. You know, the only really things that they bully each other about or get mad or things happen is like they steal a toy or they throw sand at them or different things like that. So it's necessarily not like bullying, I would say. It's more just catty, little kid things. So I think
Well, yeah, and
at that point, I
yeah,
think it's like it's good to do it right away and explain to them. But I get what you're saying. Like as they get older, it's different, and they should be talked to separately.
yeah,
So I think that's where they were mainly talking about.
yeah, and I'll agree with that. My son's in preschool, and kind of the same kind of. It's more like they're tattletelling, and they'll do it right away. He hit me, or Caden told us a story the other day. He's like, there's three. I have a son named Caden, and he was telling me a story about there's two other Cadens in his class, and he's trying to tell me a story. This Caden hit this Caden, and this Caden bit me, and he's like talking about three Cadens. It's kind of funny, but anyways, he's talking about then how the teacher had to say, "Okay, you need to stop" or whatever. But it was kind of funny. But yeah, they're preschoolers are more like yeah, they're just kind of they're learning social interaction between people. But as you get older, it starts to become more. It starts to become more. Bullying becomes more like um, that person. I don't like that person, so I'm going to pick on him just because he's goofy or he's weird or he's different, and I don't like him, so I'm going to be mean to him because I want to be mean to him. And then there goes the kind of separation and try to have more friends to pick on another person. It kind of becomes an issue, and I think when teachers realize that or see that, then that's when you pull them apart and say, "Hey, I noticed this today. Why are you doing that? Why would you say things like that? I heard this." And then try to talk to him separately, and then talk to the other person. "Hey, I heard that he said this. Are you okay? Is everything all right?" Try to get on ground with it early, and then once you do that, you can say, "Well, let's not do that. I don't know." Then you can start teaching different things, different skills, I guess. This goes like perfectly into my article. I'll go next if you want, unless Carissa, you really wanted to go.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, because this kind of goes into what exactly kind of some of the things that I learned. So I did two articles, right? One was a peer, what do you call it? Peer reviewed,
Review.
or yeah, article, and then actually in the instructions it said you only needed credible sources. I noticed that. So then the next one I took something from LDS.org. So it's not a peer reviewed, but it's a credible source, I guess you can consider it. Um, but anyway, the first one talked about bullying, and so it talked about um, the two types of bullying: physical and relational bullying. So physical would be verbal, um, cyber, and sexual bullying. And relational is more common among girls and would be considered like name calling, teasing, threatening, humiliating, and scorning. So I kind of thought that was interesting that the two differences there with bullying. One's more common in the other than in one than the other, but it occurs in both ways. And then this is what I kind of thought was really interesting in the article because it talked about kind of prevention methods. So Mackenzie, you were talking about bullying and how to, what like happens and takes place. This article that I read kind of talked about how to, if you're in a position like you are as a teacher or in high schools or counselors or whatever position you're at, even as parents, these are ways that you can like approach things to kind of help, in a sense, prevent it. And so it talked about education for prevention. It said the article talked about four approaches, and the four approaches were knowledge, attitudes, skills, and behaviors. So the first approach would be knowledge. It said discussing what bullying is, the different forms of bullying, why it is unacceptable, and what can be done about it. Teachers should consider offering leadership opportunities to these children. They will see positive outcomes to their skills. So I kind of thought that. So knowledge would be, if you're trying to increase knowledge with your kids, it would be something like, I can start that as soon as my son's in preschool right now. Even he doesn't necessarily know what bullying is, but it's tells me a story if someone hit him on the head, or if he says he doesn't like somebody, I can explain, well, we just because he did this doesn't mean we, and when they're younger, I don't think they have like, I hate that person. He might say I hate him, but the next 2 seconds later he's playing with him, right? But as you get older, we start to like form these walls around people, and you like certain people and you don't like certain people, and then you start behaving differently. So knowledge would be like, as soon as something like that happens, you explain, well, this is kind of considered, you're being rude, you're being bullying, you're segregating, you're separating yourself from him, you're trying to be socially, I don't know what the word is for it, but separating, being rude. Anyways, so that was that one point. The second point was attitudes. Attitudes would be to help others feel empathetic toward those who are bullied, teaching feeling of abhorrence towards the idea of bullying, and gaining a sense of responsibility for those who are unfairly treated. So let's say you pull a kid to the side and you just start teaching, and you start talking to them about how they felt about this certain situation, and then talk about their attitudes toward it. So towards what has happened when you're talking to somebody, and how did you, in a sense, you're just trying to increase their understanding of bullying, of being nice to be. It's just, in my mind, it's just basically be nice to people, right? It's just, it talks about attitudes. Use your brain, I think. Just be nice to people. And I think as you get older, you realize that. But I think when you're in middle school, you think about, we're talking about children, you don't really think about that stuff until you get older. Like, just be nice to people, right? Then it talked about skills would be an ability to protect children from those who bully, to control negative emotions like anger, being able to challenge bullying behaviors, and having conflict resolution abilities. So when I thought of skills, I almost thought of, in like movies, if you see a movie and there's usually always a bully to one kid, right? And then maybe in the halfway through the movie or something, the bully ends up having like a change of heart, and then like stands up for the kid to another bully. And so to me, that's kind of like the bully changes his character, and he essentially has this skill, and the skill would be technically like a power. He has this type of, whether it's physical power, or he has a lot of friends that respect him, right? And then he can stand up because he has this skill. And the next one would be behaviors that you can cater to those who have been bullied and refrain from bullying, provide help, and can resolve disputes. So talked about those kinds of 4 things about bullying. There was a thought that I had that I was going to mention earlier that I thought was really interesting about the article, and it was first one about knowledge. It said teachers should consider offering leadership opportunities to children who are more prone to bullying. And I thought that was interesting. So I thought to myself, why would you want to put someone who's like a bully in a leadership position to bully him some more, But then I thought about it. If it's in a controlled environment as a teacher, you can kind of help, watch that and monitor it, how they are being a leader, and how they're trying to get, I guess, results or advice, feedback from other kids, and you can teach that kid a lot more leadership skills and learning how to use them. And you don't have to be mean to people to get what you want. You can do it in different ways, right? So I kind of thought that was interesting. I have another article, but I don't know if I want to read it all. I kind of just put, we can go on to, I don't know if you want to go on, Carissa, and talk about some, or if you want me to just finish my next article.
Either works.
I'll just kind of briefly go over it. It was an LDS article, or it wasn't even an article. It was under let's see if I can find it. So it was under it said a parent's guide. So it was in a manual, a parent's guide, chapter 4, teaching children from 4 to 11 years old, and pretty much it just talked about. I put it here as if I can get back to my spot. Relational relational appropriateness. So just learning how to be appropriate within relationships as males and females. What types of boundaries, I guess, there are within relationships. So it talked about teaching courtesy, honesty, fidelity, mercy, good humor, and spiritual integrity. Being courteous and affectionate and intimate are all boundaries that boys, girls, males, and females need to learn how to understand those boundaries between relationships. And I think it goes that goes within bullying. It goes within just within families, marriages, whatever it is. I think it kind of understanding roles. And so the next thing it talked about was gender roles. Gender roles with women and men, and what some, I guess, expectations or things that it says girls ought to be taught. It talks about children, from 4 to 11, girls ought to be taught the arts and sciences of housekeeping, domestic finances, sewing, and cooking. Boys need to learn home repair, career preparation, and the protection of women. Both girls and boys should know how to take care of themselves and how to help each other. By example and by discussion, both sexes need to learn about being male or female, which in summary means being husbands and fathers, or wives and mothers, here and hereafter. So that was the next article, and it was kind of interesting. It just talked about relationships and how to form appropriate relationships, because we have relationships every day in our lives with people that we meet, right? We go to work, we have relationships with bosses, with coworkers, with other people that we meet in the streets, and we have these relationships with people that and just forming appropriate relationships with them. So I kind of thought that was interesting. So those were my two. I did 2 articles on 2 different things, but I think it counts.
No, that's good. So mine's a little bit different, but I did speech impediments. I want to become a speech therapist, so that's kind of up my alley and what I wanted to do. And right now I'm in. I have because I'm going into my major is early childhood special ed right now, but so I have a practicum, so I go into the school. So right now there's 2 boys, and one's in kindergarten and the other is in 3rd grade, I think, and both of them have pretty severe speech impediments, and they get really frustrated, once they try to say something and you're like, what are you saying? And so that's kind of just why I chose this. But there is lots of different interventions. Obviously the main one is speech therapy, so that's kind of obvious, but there, even in speech therapy, there's lots of different things that you can do. So I kind of have a few different sources, but some things that I wanted to talk about was, so I'm sure you guys have heard of it, but just there's kids that can't even talk at all, so there's different things that they can do, the nonverbal things. So there's the picture charts, there is the technology, I don't know what they call them, but the little boards that they can write stuff down with, and different things like that. So I thought that was interesting, and different ways to help them. Let's see, what else did I have? Sign language, so that's another intervention that they can do. Even just with kids that are slow to speak and stuff like that, then I think that using sign language is really good, because it helps them because everyone has the need and desire to talk, and so that gives them the opportunity to do that, and it just kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like builds that need. Like, so once they do get that, be able to have conversations through sign language, then it's like, oh, I really want to do this. So then it like makes them want to talk. So that's kind of interesting.
Um,
And yeah.
I just want to say something. I think it's cool that you said that because at our preschool we kind of teach them sign language. Not like obviously super crazy sign
Mhm.
language, but we just teach them the basics. And um, even I've noticed like kids like use it for like bathroom or they want like food or snack or they're hungry. We teach them we're hungry or just different things like that. Basic commands, I guess, or questions. I've noticed like the kids who do have a hard time speaking and have a hard time um, getting those words out just by asking, "Can I go to the bathroom?" Or "Can I get water?" Sometimes it's hard for them just to get those sentences out. And I've noticed they use the sign language more because they like it and they think it's fun and it helps them to get out the things that they're thinking without having to stutter and get frustrated. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good
Yeah.
thing to use.
But like I don't know, just like overall, like speech is like a big part of life, and I think a lot of us take it for granted. Like, so I'm taking it's a special ed class right now, and it is like, so we had to do different simulations. So one of the simulation was like to speak with like a stutter for like you had to go out and order stuff and different things like that. So like, and like that's hard to do first of all because like you really have to think about it, but it's like very embarrassing. So I just thought that fit in well with like social. Like, it's hard for kids to have friends and stuff if they can't get out what they're trying to, like, what is in their mind, and if they can't have conversations, like how are you supposed to get to know them and stuff. So there's just like lots of different things that you can do. I just mentioned a few, and there were like the articles that I read were just like chock full of them. So there's a lot, but that's kind of what I think. But I can summarize what we talked about unless you guys have anything else to add. Good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the first, oh, well, wait, I guess we kind of we didn't talk about our interviews, but I feel like with the discussion boards, like we've been doing it for several weeks, that and like they all were, we kind of hit all of the different domains in the just in our discussion. So I think we're good. But so first of all, we talked about the how to overcome obesity, and the biggest thing that I think we all decided was parent involvement and their example, and just being willing to help the kids and be that example, and also physical activity, having the kids be outside and just not doing technology. I thought that it was a good idea to have limits on that and be able to um, have certain TV time so they still get that, but then being able to go out and interact with others and be outside and get that physical activity. And then just briefly, Mackenzie talked about bullying, and I think it's cool when you have those experiences, it means so much more to you. So being like the preschool teacher, like you can now like go and try to apply these different things that you're learning. But just overall, I think like the biggest thing is to be the example, and I think that's like a huge thing with all of the just being a teacher and a parent. Like that's the biggest thing that we can do is to be a good example, because then the kids will follow and they look up to us. So being a good example of being kind, and I think that that's kind of what you talked about too, Andrew. Just being kind and being that example. And I thought the statistics that you brought up were interesting. And then for mine, speech therapy, just there is so many different options out there, and sign language, speech therapy, just like the different therapies that you can use in that. Lots of times they're like, you don't think that they're going to help. They're like playing with blocks or something, and you're like, how is that helping their speech? But it does. So I think that's just really cool. And yeah, is that good?